Hey VC, it's another one of those Acid Archives reviews today. And I know not all of you are that bothered about these, but the ones I've seen, there's been some really interesting albums reviewed. And today's is no exception, the one I've got for you. It's by a band called Atlantis Philharmonic. This came out in 1974 on the Dharma Records label. It's never been reissued on vinyl, so this is the only way you're going to get it on wax if that's what you want. There have been a couple of CD reissues, I believe. Not sure how official they are. But you can stream it, which I've been doing a fair bit as well. The album artwork was created by a guy called Rory Bonnet, and that's pretty striking. I'm not quite sure what it is supposed to be picturing. It looks like a really angry rodent floating in space with some neon fairies, but it's certainly eye-catching. I don't know whether Rory Bonnet went on to illustrate any other album sleeves, but I think that's a great one. Like I say, it's on the Dharma Records label, and the labels look like this. You can see it's a nice clean copy I've got. And Dharma Records was a label out of Illinois and was co-owned by a guy called Perry Johnson, who also co-produces this album. There were various other releases on Dharma Records. The ones I'm familiar with are an album by Ken Little and another by Gabriel Bondage, and they tend to be in that kind of progressive vein, which is what this is. This is symphonic progressive rock with tons of organ and lots of tasty guitar as well. So the band wasn't really a band, it was a two-man project. You've got a guy called Royce Gibson playing drums and timpani and gongs and contributing some backing vocals, and then Joe DeFazio, who does everything else. And there's a lot of everything else on this album. He plays organ, he plays piano, electric piano, harpsichord, mellotron, Moog synthesizer, guitar, bass pedals, bass guitar, lead vocals, backing vocals, and he's the co-producer of this album. So he's a busy guy, or a control freak, not sure which, but yeah, this is a really interesting listen. It starts off with a track called Atlantis, which is very much ELP style, I suppose. It's organ heavy prog, but with a really doomy edge. There's mellotron on here, there's timpani, kettle drums, gongs. This particular track kind of nicks the hook from Orff's Carmina Burana for one of its central organ riffs. But I guess there's no copyright control on that, and it works really nicely. And perhaps no one else will hear that, but I certainly did. There's some heavy, chunky guitar on here, and that is one of the things that separates this band, this album, from ELP. The vocals aren't the strongest on here, but they're serviceable. They are the one weak point, I guess. And it would perhaps have been good if Joe DeFazio had got an outside singer to come in and sing his songs, but, you know, hey, we can't complain. This is a great album anyway. The next track on here, Woodsman, it kind of opens with the sounds of cicadas. There's flurries of piano, kind of Lucky Man ELP style. Some kettle drums. It is a mellotron saturated track. It's moody, it's gentle, it's pastoral. It's kind of unhurried. Goes on for 7.5 minutes, and it doesn't outstay its welcome. It's a great track. The vocalist, like I say, has a limited range, but he sells the songs well. I guess he was responsible for writing them, and he interprets them well. Then the final track on the first side is a track called Death Man. And that has a real jazzy swing to the drums and starts with a kind of almost clubby organ riff, quite plinky plonky kind of a riff at the start. The guitar on this is really solid in that kind of Mick Box kind of style. The organ again is very Emerson, Lake and Palmer-like, particularly as the track progresses. And I I hear little sort of touches of Mountain's Nantucket Sleigh Ride in here as well. There's some really tasty guitar lines. There's a stronger vocal on here, I'd say. It's a little bit reminiscent of David Byron. Not as strong as David Byron, but that's kind of the sound that I think Joe DeFazio is going for. There's plenty of drama on here. There are multiple parts, changes in time signature. Again, it's a 5.5 minute track, and it's superb. The drums really drive this one along. In fact, there's not a weak track on this album, so I would certainly say stream the whole thing, check the whole thing out. I mean, certainly there are highlights, but you're not going to find a weak track on here. Side 2 starts with Fly the Light, and that one is kind of, whenever I hear it, it reminds me of a scene with the Oompa Loompas in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Listen to it, you'll get what I mean, I'm sure. There's tons of organ on here, harpsichord, which builds to a crescendo with dramatic sort of concert bass drum played with a felt mallet. So it's got a real kind of Oompa Loompa marching, stomping sound to it. Really good track. And next up, second track on side 2 is My Friend. Has a very lyrical solo in this track. And guitars take a back seat to the organ and mellotron on this album, but they're always lurking there and are used to maximum effect when they take centre stage, which they do fairly regularly. Like I say, on My Friend, there's a really lyrical solo in a track that basically is built around mellotron and a sort of fragile, reflective vocal. Then, perhaps the best track on this album, certainly the longest, at 8.5 minutes, is Atlas, the final track. And it begins with a chunky sort of Sabbath-style guitar riff, which leads into a full-on timpani assault. I mean, if they hired the kettle drum for this recording, they certainly got their money's worth, let's put it that way. The track moves through a mellower drifting section with an almost 80s neon prog feel to it. Think bands like IQ, Palace, Saracen, and you've got the general idea. There's a dramatic Uriah Heep feel to the backing vocals on here. Plenty of those Heep style backing vocals, which I love. And there are a total of, I think I counted right, 3 really tasty guitar solos on here. The first of which is backed by lots of crashing gongs. So yeah, this is a fantastic album. On the whole, the vocals are melodramatic and whimsical. They have almost a kind of English sounding Canterbury kind of feel to them, I suppose. The songs are symphonic, organ and mellotron to the max. Guitars, when they feature, are chunky. The solos are fantastic. There is nothing remotely American sounding on this album, except perhaps that fleeting feeling of Nantucket Sleigh Ride, but then Mountain were just channeling Cream anyway. So yeah, you would swear that this is the work of an English band. I can heartily recommend this one. If you can track it down, buy it. If you can't, like I say, you can stream it easily enough. And I'll be interested to know what you think. Pretty difficult to pick up. Certainly, like I say, I found it took me a number of years to find a copy. Do not crop up for sale very often, not even in the States, I don't think. So if you do see it, grab it while you can. So what does the Acid Archive say about this record? Well, they say this is a top-notch private press prog rock record that works because it has the usual progressive elements, mellotron, organ, synth, heavy guitar licks, sci-fi and mythological lyrics, but is more geared towards songwriting than wanky soloing. The songs are long but don't branch off into a million different directions. This is very well conceived and not difficult to listen to. They, I should say he, as the band is basically a duo, one guy plays drums and another does everything else. Probably couldn't have done a bunch of show-offy solos even if they wanted to, and music ends up being very high on hooks and of course drama. The 8.5 minute closing song is especially intense. The only problem is the mediocre vocals. He's not pretentious or macho, he just plain can't sing very well. With a real singer, this would have been a masterpiece. As it is, this is still one of the very best in the genre and not pricey. So that's it. If you know the album, tell me what you think. If you don't know it and stream it and enjoy it, let me know. Atlantis Philharmonic. Well worth checking out. See you soon.